The Sport Clips Haircuts Head of the Class giveaway. Register for your chance to win a Razer laptop and more at sportclips.com/back-to-school and go straight to the head of the class with an MVP experience. So check in online today. No purchase necessary. 50 USDC age 18 plus. Ends 8/24/18.
This is the Best of Golic and Wingo podcast.
Hey, Monday morning. Glad you're with us. Golic, Wingo, ESPN Radio, ESPN2. We are presented by Progressive Insurance. All phone guests join us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Mike Golic Jr., Trey Wingo here with you. Fellas, how was your weekend?
Oh, it was wonderful. Wonderful. Yeah. Spent a little time in Arizona.
Yes.
That was very nice. The wife and I, then we were in Boston yesterday with Mike and with my son Jake and Jenny, who own a couple of those Orange Theory Fitnesses. We had a little fundraiser there for a 90-minute class, so that was to raise some money, raise money.
Raise some money. A group called Daughters for Dads. A friend of mine at Notre Dame, Jordy Shoemaker, was a lacrosse player there, lost her father to cancer when we were at school, and so with the Notre Dame women's lacrosse team, had been putting on this event for a while, and it was something that she partnered with Jake and Jenny, my brother and my sister-in-law on, and so we were up there, a part of that, raising some money for cancer research, putting on a workout class. So we had a lot of nurses from the hospital that Jordy works at there, and everyone kind of coming out to support the cause. So that was a nice portion of the weekend that for me made me actually pull myself away from the screen where I was glued.
Yeah, how about it?
I was up at midnight on Saturday night watching the second half of the Seahawks preseason game. I'm a 20-something not out drinking and having fun, so I can watch second half preseason football.
I'm not going to lie. I was sitting there because we flew in from Arizona to Boston. We all stayed at Jake and Jenny's house late and got there. And I sat in the couch and watched that as well and just kept looking over at Mike thinking what a loser he was. He wasn't out.
Listen, I have
not the lie.
I have no problem with you doing that, although I do have a problem with something else I heard from you. You were a little too enthusiastic about the chill in the air. Because I get it. My favorite fall days are when the sun is strong on your face, but you take a little breathe in and it gets you in the chest.
Yeah.
That's my favorite thing.
Little bite.
But we know after that what's coming. Let's enjoy. Pump the brakes a little bit. Let's enjoy summer as long as summer is here.
I'm kind of with Mike on that one. It was because I remember I asked Jenny in the morning. It was Sunday morning. I said, "Oh, is it warm out?" She said, "No, it's a little chilly." And I thought, "Oh, all right, just a little long sleeve shirt." Just a light one I heard you talking about. Just with I didn't mind the little chill. I wish it would stay right there, to your point,
there's
Trey,
the problem.
I get it, but man, it felt nice.
I'm talking about a moment and a feeling. I'm not punting on summer by any stretch of the imagination. Let's not get that twisted. But that moment and that feeling, if you could catch that in a bottle.
Yeah. By the way, summer's almost over.
Yeah, Shut up. Sorry.
Shut up. I hate to be the Grim Reaper here, but it's almost over.
I don't. Why do you got to do that?
Whatever.
By the way, I was up. I was in Nova Scotia.
Yes,
so it was
you
a little
were.
Chilly. Unbelievable, this place. The Cabot Cliffs and Cabot Links golf courses, just outstanding.
And someone in your group hit a home run, a hole-in-one and a home run.
Yes, they hit a home run. Yes, they hit a home run.
A hole-in-home run, then it wasn't you.
No, it was Brandel Chambly, our guy from the Golf Channel.
Show off.
Right, really?
Yeah, what a show off.
And by the way, he hit it, and he just turns to me and goes, holds up one finger.
Did he buy drinks?
Yes, he did.
Is that still? I'm not.
He did.
We golf, Mike and I, a few times a year. Even though I'm pretty much playing well enough now to beat you, Trey. Is that still a thing though? When you get a hole-in-one that you're supposed to buy drinks?
Yes, absolutely. It is.
Okay.
And he took care of that. He did.
By the way, holding up the one is pretty baller. If you're going to go and do it and you just kind of give that subtle one, I'm all for acting like you haven't been there before, but that's the subtle, I'm just better than all you clowns.
Freaking Chambly. He just turned to us and just holds up a finger. We're like, ugh.
Yeah, I'd have held up a different finger right back to him.
I did.
He's still been number one.
I did, actually.
There you go.
Just
good.
so you know, so we're all on the same
good,
page. And it was a great weekend. Glad you guys had a great weekend. Let's get into it with what's trending. And Justin Verlander had a pretty good weekend. Pitched just well enough to earn his 200th career win, and the Astros hit 5 home runs, beating the A's 9-4 to retake sole possession of the AL West.
Yeah, nice battle going back and forth there. The A's now 1 back. Seattle still hanging in there, 4.5 back. They'll be fighting for that one of the wild card spots as well. But Verlander, he didn't pitch great. Gave up 4 runs, 7 hits over the 5 1/3, but he did get that 200th career win. Now there is only 2 other actives who have over 200 career wins. That's Bartolo Colon has 247, CC Sabathia 244. I think why this is now the milestone 200. 250 is, I think, without a doubt, the next 300, because we're not getting any more 300s. We're not getting any more 300 winners. So, you look at, again, Sabathia 6 away, Cologne is 3 away. Obviously Verlander just getting to 250. I would say that's obviously going to be the mark.
And to do it in the fashion they did in the game they did, taking back sole possession at first place, they've been tied with the A's, who had won 40 of their last 53. Like, what a disgusting tear they've been on. But
it's like the Red Sox.
Yeah, I mean, Houston reasserting themselves, though, certainly in that division. We know the defending champs. Verlander was the one that came out before the season and kind of reminded everyone that we are those guys. Felt a little slighted with all the talk about other teams in this, but goes out and continues to back up what has been a great time in Houston for him. He was the difference coming over last year.
And good news for Houston fans. Altuve has started his rehab assignment in AAA, so hopefully get him back soon and win in a good time that you need him.
We've got the breakfast question up on Golic and Wingo on our Twitter feed, but I wonder if we should put up something else. What's more likely to happen? We'll have another 300 game winner in baseball, or someone's going to break Emmitt Smith's all-time rushing record in the NFL, because the way the NFL is played right now,
good question.
I think that 18,500, whatever it is, yards, I don't think anybody's come within a sniff of that thing. Or Jerry Rice's receiving yard total, simply because he played forever.
The rushing record is the good comparison because, listen, we all lived the 300 number, and we all live who was the leading rusher in the NFL, and those are two bygone products now as far as the numbers that we put them at.
And I mean, single season success, we've seen guys are going to be able to top that out, but you're right, that consistency over time as a focal point of your offense seems to be dead and gone.
I think you can hang Emmitt Smith as the all-time leading rusher in the history of the NFL forever and ever and ever. And I'm pretty sure we're never going to have a 300-game winner again in baseball. So put that up. Get that on our Twitter machine. Do all that kind of stuff.
Nice.
Internets, interwebs, all that kind of stuff. Oh, yeah. We continue with what's trending in baseball. And the Yankees swept the Blue Jays and have pulled to within 9.5.
Seriously?
Yeah.
That's a line we're using?
Yeah.
Pulled to within 9.5 games?
Notice the sarcasm with which it was used.
I'm glad you used it that way, because that's an actual line that's written down here. Seriously?
You'd use that in the sarcasm font on Twitter.
It should read, the Yankees swept the Blue Jays and pulled to within, still out of it for the division title.
Yes, and got nowhere in their quest to chase the Red Sox.
I mean, come on. You keep an eye on here. Didi Gregorius, he hurts his heel in this one. Kendall Morales, he collides with. Morales took the one hopper and was in the baseline to take it. Gregorius runs into him, strains his heel, ends up going back in, but then back out. So we got to keep an eye. Looks like he may get a stint on the DL for that one.
Yeah, it's basically, I heard it was a pretty bad bruise. It sounded like on there. So something to keep an eye on, though. I mean, Gregorius was a guy who, when we talked about the Yankees around the trade deadline, part of the reason that they didn't have to really worry about going after Manny Machado, at least in their mind, and weren't as serious, is because people kept saying, well, Didi Gregorius, you get plenty of production out of that guy in the same position. Why go and be redundant at that spot now? If this turns into anything, you might start to have that twinge of regret seek in, but hopefully short stint on the DL, certainly something the Red Sox are dealing with a little bit now, and something that might be a little bit more impactful as the season goes on, just because that's starting to become a repeat issue. Now Chris Sale's second trip to the DL.
And you look and continue on the Yankees here, about Jay Happ, still undefeated since he's come over to the Yankees. It's nice when you get a 6-run first inning. That certainly helps, thanks to Bird in his grand slam. But Happ pitching well coming over, and that's what listen, at this point for these teams we're talking about, everything is looking, shooting forward to the postseason, and with the Chris Sale issue going on in Boston, we'll see.
Well, not only that, but the Yankees are pretty happy that the Astros are now back in first place in the AL West, because the last thing the Yankees want to have is one game playoff at their place. Oh, and let's bring in the Astros to try and see if you can beat them on one game to continue your postseason run. Meanwhile, let us celebrate the marriage of Major League Baseball and the Little League World Series, as the New York Mets went on to beat the Phillies 8-2 in that Little League World Series Classic out of Williamsport, Pennsylvania. And it was so cool to see them out there doing the things that major leaguers or little leaguers do, shaking hands after the game, sportsmanship. And then Jacob deGrom and Noah Syndergaard sitting there watching the Little League World Series. This was a great concept, and I hope they continue to grow.
Well, it's got to be cool for the kids to see the players
yes.
hanging around there and watching. And then as Trey said, the players, the major leaguers did the whole line handshake that you don't see in sports, and save for hockey in the postseason and when those series are over. So they did that. As far as the teams are concerned, Phillies losing this one. Phillies a half game behind Atlanta. There's some really nice races that are kind of lining up here. Phillies, as I mentioned, half behind Atlanta. They play 7 more times. The last 3 are in Philadelphia, the last 3 games of the regular season. So we'll see where that takes us. But pretty cool. I think, 3 of the players on both teams had actually played in Little League World Series.
Yeah.
When they were 12. So pretty cool moment for those players.
Very cool.
Kids, yeah.
Nice, for everyone involved to be out there. I saw our Sunday night baseball crew, some of the Baseball Tonight guys, Adnan, Timmy Kirkchum were out there. They had some of the special nickname jerseys that the players were wearing as well out there. So all of that, and then Rob Manfred still gets to come out and answer questions about the Jose Urena suspension.
Sure he does.
Which we will get into later. By the way, Manfred also announced, the commissioner of Major League Baseball, that it will be the Cubs and Pirates next year at the Little League World Series Classic. So it's a really cool thing, and it's good to see them continue to do that and see if it can help grow Little League Baseball and help grow the interest again in Major League Baseball. Meanwhile, Brandt Snedeker was in the zone this weekend, brought to you by AutoZone. Get in the zone, AutoZone. Rode the momentum from that opening round 59, wire to wire, to win the Wyndham Championship. He finished at 21 under, the second lowest score at a PGA Tour event this season, guys.
This one got interesting at the end.
Yep.
59 on the first day. By the way, what is he, the 10th, I think, to get a 59 to break 60? But I think only the 5th to then go on and win that.
It's a 10th sub 60, because Jim Furyk actually shot a 58 a few years ago.
Okay.
Here at the
10 sub 60 and 5. He's the 5th to actually go on and win it. But he's on the 17th. CT Pan is on the 18th. And they're both 20 under.
Yeah.
And what does Pan do? And I loved his quote. He said, I heard a couple of voices in my head. Pan double bogeyed the 18th.
Yeah.
So he made it pretty easy for Snedeker to finish up. And he ends up birdieing the 18th to win it by 3. But to screw up that last hole like Pan did and say, I heard voices in my own head, it kind of messed himself up. But for Snedeker, he jumped up to 30 spots or 50 spots, I should say, to number 30 on the list as we start the FedEx this week. We're going to be out there.
Absolutely, the Northern Trust.
Northern Trust out in Jersey as we get going on to see who can win $10 million.
By the way, any golfer that has ever picked up a club is very familiar with the phrase, I heard the voices in my head. Thomas Bjorn infamously once walked off a European Tour event after putting 3 drives into the water on one hole. And they said, what happened? He said, too many voices in my head. I mean, if anybody's played this game at a competitive level for any stretch of time, you're like, yep, been there, done that.
The voices in my head are usually my friends drunkenly screaming in my backswing. So different set of voices entirely.
I completely agree. The voice in my head is usually, where's the beer cart? But I usually say that out loud.
Yeah. Well, that's just like you and Austin Powers. Your inner monologue is actually coming out
there,
without you knowing it. But you mentioned it. We are going to. You can grab your tickets for the Northern Trust Open Paramus, New Jersey, Friday, August 24th, and come watch our show for Taking in a Day at Championship Golf. It's the first event in the FedEx playoffs. By the way, Rory McIlroy has pulled out of that event. Look, his game is a mess right now, and he's like, I don't really play well there anyway, and I usually play better in the rest of the FedEx playoffs, so we'll see what happens. But again, congratulations to Brandt Snedeker. Won it in 2007, and 11 years later, wins it again in 2018. All right, Golic and Wingo, presented by Progressive Insurance. Small business protection just got easier. With more than 30 coverage options available, Progressive has you covered. More at progressivecommercial.com. Well, as we continue here on a Monday morning, again, I am with you, Junior, geeking out on the preseason in the NFL, and there's been a lot of talk about this new rule in football. But honestly, I think when push comes to shove this weekend, it's going to be more about a not a new rule, but a re-emphasized rule that is going to cause havoc in the regular season in the NFL. And that is the Aaron Rodgers rule. We all know what happened last year when Anthony Barr sacked Aaron Rodgers on a completely clean play, but as he finished the tackle, he landed on Aaron Rodgers, breaking his collarbone. And, a couple years back, it was his left collarbone, his non-throwing collarbone, and he was able to come back at the end of the year. Well, this was his right collarbone, and he was out for the rest of the year, and it ended their season, and it, quite frankly, ended the Packers' season as well. So they had a new rule of emphasis. Point of emphasis on an old rule.
Right.
They've done this a couple of times. And basically the NFL said, we're going to make sure that kind of play isn't in football anymore. A rushing defender is prohibited from committing such intimidating and punishing acts as stuffing a passer into the ground or unnecessarily wrestling or diving him down after the passer has thrown the ball. And we saw, ironically, a case of this being called in a game in Minnesota against a Jacksonville quarterback. And I got to tell you, it sure as heck looked like a good football play to me without any unnecessarily pounding or driving somebody into the ground. And they got a 15-yard penalty.
Well, I mean, again, it's going to be how they're going to interpret the rule. You're not allowed to body weight a guy, right?
Yep.
I mean,
well, it used to be you can't drive him into the ground. Now they're saying
now you can't body weight him.
Yeah.
You can't. Again, you can't land your body on him. Listen, I think I've been saying this for a couple of years now. I understand the intent of safety, but I think they've gone overboard. And I mean, God knows we'll get into the helmet rule and the ridiculousness of the calls that we're seeing right now. But as far as the body weight rule and how much it's changed, when I played in Philadelphia, Clyde Simmons was unbelievable. This was legal then. Clyde Simmons normally he was the right end, so he would come from the blind side of the quarterback, and he did an unbelievable job of he would come across the body, pin the arm of the quarterback, their throwing shoulder against their own body, and then he would pile drive him. It was legal. So, I mean, you didn't think anything of it. You know, he separated, I think in 1 year, he separated like 3 shoulders of quarterbacks. And again, you don't want to sit there and hurt anybody, but if you're allowed to land on a guy, you're going to land a guy. That's how I was taught to tackle by my father. He said, when we were taught, square the guy up, hit him, drive him into the ground like he's not even there. I mean, that was football. That's how it was. So they are obviously changing that because they don't want us watching a bunch of backup quarterbacks. Now, as a former defensive player, my thought process is everything is happening so fast. If you willfully see a guy drive a guy into the ground, I can somewhat understand that. But in this Minnesota play, the defender was on his knees by the time the quarterback and he hit the ground. And his body weight did go on the quarterback, but in no way, shape, or form did I think it was egregious to the point of throwing a flag. But they're going to throw it. And that, unfortunately, is something the defensive players are going to have to understand. You can't at all. You're going to have to turn your body and it's so much easier said than done because that's what people are going to say. Oh, just turn your body. This is all happening in a split second.
Yeah, you can't do it that way.
It's so difficult to do, but that's what the defenders are going to be asked to do.
You just said it's a point of emphasis, a renewed point of emphasis. What do officials do during the preseason? They overflag points of emphasis. They try and make a point in all this. The outrage Olympics over the new wave of NFL rules has been really fascinating to watch in this. But in this situation, I don't think it's unfair to say, yeah, it was enforced poorly here. Like, yeah, they called a penalty in an area where it should not have been penalized. This is not what they're looking to eradicate, the hit that we saw there, but they're going to err on the side of throwing the flag more often than not in the preseason. I don't think this is going to be something that has far-reaching effects when we get to the regular season. I think the intent here is, like you said, rightly to keep quarterbacks on the field, which is a worthwhile endeavor. If it's perfect, you can work out the kinks along the way, but I would rather that be the intent than otherwise, where we all of a sudden do end up with playoff matchups against both backup quarterbacks going into. No one wants to see that in the NFL increasingly, with the focus on being an entertainment model in a world that demands that, has to kind of adhere to this stuff.
Couple of things there. One, I absolutely agree. Look, we had the Tom Brady rule after the 2008 season where he was hit from behind, or hit low, and Bernard Pollard tore up his knee in week 1, and he was out the rest of the season. So we have an Aaron Rodgers rule, or a re-emphasized rule, and now we have the Tom Brady rule going back to the start of the 2009 season after what happened in 2008. But here's why I disagree with you. I think exactly how they're calling this one in the preseason is going to be how they call it in the regular season. I think the helmet thing will work itself out. We'll get into that later. We'll have John Fox and Mike Pereira from Fox Sports is going to be joining us a little later. But I'm almost 100% convinced with the quarterback rule, this is how they're going to call it. Because remember, a couple of years ago, there was a Saints-Niners game in New Orleans, and Ahmad Brooks came in and basically hit a perfect shot on Drew Brees, but the video looked like his head moved back, and they called that one for roughing the passer, even though it was a perfect textbook tackle, the way it was set up at that time. I'm 100% convinced that the way they're doing this in the preseason, they're going to call it in the regular season, because it is a quarterback, because of what you just said. The helmet rule, I think they'll figure that out. And I may be a little optimistic about that, but I think they're going to tweak that going into the regular season. But I think you should be prepared for this play to be flagged like it is right now in the preseason going into the regular season.
I'm going to need an explanation as to why that optimism is limited to one area and not the other.
Because it's the quarterback.
I mean, that's
because it's the quarterback.
Again, that's fine, but the fact that they wouldn't adjust that one rule for egregious instances like the one that we saw this weekend that shouldn't have been called,
I don't know if they will. I don't know if
refs just get better at calling this stuff. Like they're like the rest of us. The more they do something, the better they will get at identifying situations where it applies and where it will not.
And listen, the way it goes down is they say, look, if you even think it's close in the preseason, throw the flag so people will understand where the parameters are. But I think everybody understands what the parameters are when it comes to quarterbacks. Don't hurt the starters. Keep them in the game for the point of making sure what you just said, we have the best entertainment out there. And I think that's not going to change.
I agree that they're going to protect the quarterbacks more. I'm not so sure the helmet gets. I hope it does, but you know what else the league is also doing?
Yeah.
Paying out $1 billion.
Correct.
To a bunch of players.
Correct.
So I don't think they want to go through that again. So I think they're going to be overly protected on any kind of helmet hits right now and have us all screaming week in and week out.
I think we mistake adjusting for overhauling when people just get better at things that they do more often, and I think that's what will happen in this process.
I hope so.
I think that applies more to the helmet rule than it does to the quarterback rule. I think just be prepared for
that.
I
hate quarterbacks.
Yeah, well, that's understandable.
All right.
Especially since you were on the other side of that. And that's
exactly right.
Living. Oh, by the way, we didn't even mention my visit to Tim Hortons in Canada over the weekend. We'll get to that a little bit later.
Golic
and Wingo.
and Wingo.
Mm-hmm. Trey Wingo and Mike Golic Sr. Buster Olney from Baseball Tonight joins us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. And here's the greatest read of all. Get triple action protection for optimal engine performance with the Shell V-Power Nitro Plus Premium Gasoline. Yeah! And that is how we bring in Buster Olney. You can check out the Baseball Tonight podcast with new episodes weekdays. Listen to the ESPN app or Apple Podcasts. All right, Buster, good morning. Before we get into anything else, let's just celebrate the one thing that was so cool over the weekend. Seeing the Mets and Phillies playing in front of all those Little Leaguers and then seeing some of the Mets watch the Little Leaguers in the Little League World Series Classic. I'm telling you, that is the coolest thing I've seen in a long time.
It is really the coolest thing, and I always love how the players absolutely rise to the occasion. You know, the both teams showing up on flights and being greeted by Little Leaguers, and the Little Leaguers riding the bus with them to the ballpark here in Williamsport. And you know, from what I heard from the players, there's a dance contest between the Little Leaguers, the Phillies and Mets players having fun with that. The interplay and how much the players love that. You know, all the Phillies got to the ballpark, the minor league park here, to play their game. And Jake Arrieta, who's a starting pitcher, and you know his schedule was pretty much over for the day, work schedule. And so he asked the Philly staff, "Hey, can I go back to the Little League parks?" And so he went back, and other guys went back to Little League parks to hang out more. You know, last night after the game, I was watching Rhys Hoskins, who had so much fun with the Little Leaguers over at the ballpark. The Phillies lose the game. It's at the end of the day. He's one of the last players to file off, and he had this group of about 5-10 Little Leaguers standing there screaming for him, and he puts down his bat, he puts down his glove, and he signs autographs, and then he goes into the clubhouse. It was so cool to see the way the players react.
Well, I mean, all these players came from not the Little League World Series necessarily, but from Little League. It's a cool thing to kind of look back on where you came from. And every year at the Little League World Series, Buster, there's some storylines or some players. And this year, one of them is Big Al, who hits dingers. And so, what else you have on Big? He is becoming the story of the Little League World Series, a fun kid.
Yeah, when I checked into the hotel the other day, Big Al was in the lobby and he was surrounded. Okay. And I couldn't get close to him. And I don't know if you guys have seen the video that Rhys Hoskins taped with him, where he sat down and just talked about how here's Big Al. He and I both love the same thing, dingers. and you're right. And he was going around behind home plate signing autographs. Sean Yamaguchi is one of the stars of Team Hawaii, and I interviewed him during the course of last night's game. And as we got started, I asked him, "Hey, how you doing?" And he was like, "Man." He was overwhelmed by all the autograph seekers in the crowd. And he said that he and another friend had been signing for the better part of an hour. And he mentioned to me he was hungry. He was hoping to eat some stuff and get to that, but he just had so many autographs to sign at the age of 12.
Man, that is my hero now. Listen, I want to sit here and sign for you guys all day, but I got a snack bar to attend to. Big Al is the hero that we all deserve right now. Talking to Buster Olney of the Baseball Tonight podcast, our ESPN MLB insider. All right, Buster, I could sit here and talk about Big Al with you all day. I hope you got an autograph. But in the world of Major League Baseball, we were having a discussion this morning. Justin Verlander gets his 200th win last night as the Astros retake first place in that division against the A's. But we were thinking big picture here. The 300-win pitcher, is that completely a thing of the past at this point?
Absolutely. The way that starting pitchers are used now, where essentially teams are saying, do not expose them for much past 2 times through the order. You're just not going to see starting pitchers left in the game long enough to get decisions to get that many wins. And the last decade, I've had a running conversation with CC Sabathia about 300 wins, and I think he's like at 244 right now. And so each spring I'd say, CC, you going to do it? You're going to get to 300? And he's like, no. This spring when I asked him, his answer was 2 words, no, and the first one started with an F. Where he's like, that is just not happening in this day and age. A good year for a starting pitcher now is if you win 15 games. So I think the standards for the Hall of Fame will naturally come down because of that. That's why I think one way or the other, Justin Verlander has already punched his ticket to the Hall of Fame.
Absolutely. We're talking to Buster Olney, our baseball insider, about what's going on not only in the Little League World Series, but what's going on in the bigs. Listen, what's more of a concern for you right now, depending on how important they are to the team? The bruised heel to Didi Gregorius of the Yankees, or Chris Sale once again, Buster, their ace, going back on the DL with shoulder soreness in that throwing shoulder?
Well, I'm more concerned about Chris Sale because this is now multiple situations for him this year. Now, when you talk to the Red Sox, and Chris Sale has told reporters, look, if this were in the postseason, it wouldn't be a big deal. We've seen him through the course of his career. He has a difficult time maintaining his performance through the end of the year. The Red Sox have worked really diligently, Alex Cora, the new manager, in reducing his pitch count and saving innings for later in the year. But you wonder what's going on there. I had a general manager years ago laugh at me when, as his team handed out a diagnosis of inflammation in the shoulder, he said, that doesn't tell you guys anything. We're not giving you any information. That's merely a symptom. And I think the underlying question in this is what is causing the inflammation. The Red Sox probably aren't going to tell us. Now, the good thing is they have such a big lead in the East that they've got time to manage this. That's the same thing with the Yankees and Gregorius. Let's face it, they're probably not going to win the division, being 9.5 games out. So they also have the time to manage that situation with Gregorius, Aaron Judge, et cetera, and get them right for that wild card game.
Buster, while we're on that subject, what can the 2018 Red Sox learn from the 1998 Yankees who were honored over the weekend?
Yeah, and I covered that 98 Yankee team for the New York Times. And, look, they blitzed through the regular season. They won 114 games. And it was amazing how this, 6.5 months of dominance seemed to evaporate within the span of 48 hours. They were playing the Cleveland Indians, who had eliminated them the year before in the playoffs. They fell behind in the American League Championship Series 2-1. And right then, you could see in the players and their demeanors and their faces, they understood that you can have an amazing regular season and a record-setting number of victories. None of it matters unless you validate it by winning the World Series. And so there was a period in that postseason, in which you could see the pressure on the players. And that's what the Red Sox can expect. That as dominant as they've been, when they get to October, they're going to be facing a different, special kind of pressure that they've never dealt with before.
Buster, in the musical chairs of the National League, whether it's division or the wild card, right now you sit there, you have 5 teams a game and a half out, or within a game and a half of each other for the 2 wild card spots. So when this game of musical chairs ends, who do you think gets left out of that wild card in the National League?
Golic, I'm worried about the Dodgers. Look, the absence of Kenley Jansen from their bullpen has been a big deal because they've got a lot of other guys who are good in setup roles or good in specialized roles. But Kenley Jansen has been one of the best closers in baseball, and with him out, that bullpen has really suffered. So I think they're going to wind up being out. I think the St. Louis Cardinals are going to wind up being in. It's been amazing to see their transformation since they changed managers. Look, I think Mike Matheny's a great baseball guy, but we were around the Cardinals in the second day after that managerial change was made. Mike Schilt took over. It was remarkable to see how the players reacted to Schilt. And you hear from guys, look, he's someone you root for. He's someone that you really like. This is someone whose first job after he finished college was a high school baseball coach. You know, he's not someone who played professionally. So the Cardinals have really taken off under him, and they're just gathering momentum.
They certainly are, as we're talking to Buster Olney, our baseball insider. Buster, there's been a lot of talk about the Urena suspension for what he did to Ronald Acuna, and Rob Manfred was on and talking about why he thought the suspension handed down 6 games was valid.
We had a lot of conversation about the incident before the suspension. I think it's fair to say that the suspension was at the outside of the envelope of what we have done in the past. We are having ongoing conversation about it. Obviously, anything in the game where you put a player, particularly a player as important as that player at that point in the season to that particular club, it makes you think about what you ought to do going forward in order to make sure you don't have those kinds of incidents.
You agree with that, Buster?
I agree with everything he said. I would have handled it differently if I were in his case. If they had given Urena a 10-game suspension, that would have just been for show. The union would have stepped in. It wouldn't have been in line with precedent. The union probably would have won any sort of grievance, but I think in that case it was worth it to make that point and essentially say, look, we're going to, in an effort to change this culture around just throwing at guys, we are going to give a high number of games to get the players' attention, and if you guys get it back down to 6, that's fine. And I think that would have been a great case to have it in. You know, over the weekend, Joey Votto of the Cincinnati Reds was a victim of retaliation in a game on August 4th. He was hit on the knee, 96-mile-per-hour fastball by Ryan Madsen. He was so angry in that moment. He was yelling at Madsen, like, what are we doing here? And he tried to get it right for a couple weeks. He went on the disabled list on Saturday. It's ridiculous. It's a stupid part of the baseball culture.
Certainly is, as we're talking to Buster. What's not a stupid part of the baseball culture is that the Oakland A's have had a lot of winning moments recently. Winning moments brought to you by La Quinta Inns and Suites. Book at LQ.com and win at business. A lot of people seem to think, Buster, oh, this is cute what the A's are doing, but when push comes to shove, the Astros are going to be where they are right now atop that division. What do you think the realistic chances are for the A's to make this competitive and even have a chance to actually win the division?
Oh, I think they're right there for a couple reasons. One, you know, the Astros have gone through this recent slide because they had so many their key guys out. Carlos Correa just came back a week ago. George Springer came back, I think it was in Friday's game. Jose Altuve making his way back. The question with Altuve, who's dealing with those lingering knee issues, how will he be down the stretch? So the Astros, you know, their strength is predicated in that everyday lineup. We'll see how good they are down in these final games. And the other thing, too, that really works for the Athletics, I think, that's a team among all the contenders, you know, the Yankees, the Red Sox, the Astros, the Indians. There's no pressure on that group. Like, they're just out there having fun. All these young guys, Matt Chapman, Blake Trinan doing a great job out of the bullpen. It feels like that they are just gathering momentum as they go. And I guarantee you this, if they wind up playing the wild card game or if they wind up winning the division, that's a team nobody is going to want to play.
Oh, and if only people would come out to see them, as Matt Chapman had to say, hey, come watch us, Buster. We're actually a fun team, right? That was one of the most interesting things of that entire discussion. All right, Buster, we appreciate it. We thanks for being with us this morning and sharing your insights.
Thanks, Buster.
See you guys.
Golic.
I tell you what, a great sports night last night, no doubt about it.
And Wingo.
What a day, what a show, what a time.
1, 2, 3, 4.
When it comes to hiring, you don't have time to waste. You need help getting to your short list of qualified candidates fast. That's why you need Indeed.com. Post a job in minutes, set up screener questions, then zero in on qualified candidates using an intuitive online dashboard. And when you need to hire fast, accelerate your results with sponsored jobs. New users can try for free at Indeed.com/podcast. That's Indeed.com/podcast. Terms, conditions, and quality standards apply.
Support for the Golic and Wingo Show podcast comes from our friends at Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Let's talk about buying homes for a minute. Because of rising interest rates, there's a lot of unpredictability when it comes to buying a home these days. It's causing a whole lot of anxiety with folks. Well, our friends at Quicken Loans are doing something about it. They're calling it the power buying process, and here's how it works. Quicken Loans will verify your income, assets, and credit in less than 24 hours to give you a verified approval. This gives you the strength of a cash buyer. Then once you're verified, you qualify for their all-new exclusive Rate Shield approval. First, they lock your rate for up to 90 days while you shop. Now, here's the best part. If rates go up, your rate stays the same. But if rates go down, your rate also drops. You win either way. It's the kind of thinking you'd expect from America's largest mortgage lender. To get started, go to rocketmortgage.com/Golic. Rate Shield approval only valid on certain 30-year purchase transactions. Additional conditions or exclusions may apply. Based on Quicken Loans data in comparison to public data record. Equal housing lender. Licensed in all 50 states. NMLS ConsumerAccess.org number 3030.
Golic and Wingo, ESPN Radio and ESPN News on a Monday morning. We are presented by Progressive Insurance. All phone guests join us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. You can get in touch with us via the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed or call in on our voicemail line, 860-506-5505. And people have already been chiming in on that about a million different things, including our poll question, what is the best breakfast carb in relation to making a breakfast sandwich,
right? Which
was the part that was left off to begin with, because I was hot and bothered that hash browns were not a part of it, because hot and bothered is how I feel whenever I have a good hash brown.
Oh, my God.
But what were the choices up there in that poll question, Junior?
It was biscuits, croissant, English muffin, bagel.
Bagel, okay. People are weighing in, and people are hating on the biscuits, and I don't understand this.
Hey guys, this is Orville, and I've always had the problem that a biscuit crumbles a lot more than a croissant does. So if you're eating this in the car, you best not be eating it while you're driving. And if you're sitting in one of the other seats, you should have something underneath it to catch the crumbs anyway.
All right, I agree with that.
We handle all the big problems here.
Biscuit does flake. I think the croissant flakes more.
It breaks off into little pieces more.
It does. But
unless that biscuit is as hard as a rock.
Right. The biscuit does do that. But I think the biscuit is most versatile because the biscuit can do any of the other things. Plus, name one of the other choices out there that you can put gravy over.
All of them?
You know what I'm talking about. I mean, biscuits and gravy.
I mean, in a way that's established already, no, but if you want to
be a trendsetter,
broaden your horizons.
Hell bent and bound for glory.
Okay.
Free your mind.
Blaze your own path.
Red pill or blue pill.
There you go. People are also Wingo. So that was a negative biscuit situation. Here's a positive biscuit situation.
The best breakfast is biscuits and gravy from Whataburger. Add chopped bacon and scrambled eggs on top. Biscuits and gravy from Whataburger is the best breakfast, hands down.
That's pretty good, by the way. Spent a lot of time in Texas.
See, I did as well. Whataburger, it wasn't Whataburger's fault.
Yeah.
I had a very, very, very rough night.
Yeah.
Tried to get absorption at Whataburger at about 2 a.m. and lost everything.
Well, then it did its job.
I know, but
your soul.
But I have not been to a Whataburger since,
really?
And it's not Whataburger's fault.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's his fault. It's just
sounds like
it happened by eating one a bit, but as a condition I was in.
Are you guys not distracted by what's been put on our screen right now? So Stanzik threw this up there. It's a tweet from Melinda Mayo saying, "This is how we wedding in Southeast Arkansas. It's a gravy fountain with biscuits on the inside. Think like a chocolate fondue fountain.
Chocolate fondue
but
or
it's made
a cheese
of gravy.
fountain. It is literally, yes, but perfectly. Think of the chocolate fondue or the cheese station or whatever.
Man.
And it is actually gravy.
It's a gravy fountain.
Being able to put
Holy
cheese
smokes.
underneath that, maybe some chicken tendies, some French fries.
That is awesome.
That's like where I was over the weekend, that would be considered a poutine fountain.
Well, there you have it.
That would be a poutine fountain north of the border.
That works.
By the way, that was Buster that emailed that to us. So Buster is always looking out for this show.
Appreciate that.
Thank God
Buster.
somebody has to.
Phenomenal.
Okay, so we got football coming up this weekend.
Four
Golic and
games.
Wingo reminding you to grab your tickets for the Northern Trust Open in Paramus, New Jersey, Friday, August 24th. Come watch our show before taking in a day of championship golf at the FedEx. Of course, that's Friday, and then this Saturday we've got football games.
4 games.
Yeah.
So it is starting off what week? Is
week
this
zero?
This is week zero.
Week pre-1.
Oh yeah,
Week pre-1.
Week zero, as it's dubbed here at the Worldwide Leader.
So 4 games, and then Thursday, next Thursday, August 30th, you start to hit a pretty meaty schedule going into that first weekend of games. But 4 games going on. There is a poll out there. CBS Sports college football writers. All right, guys, quick math. You ready?
Yeah.
Spoke with 1/5 of 129 active coaches.
No idea.
How many is that? Come on.
1/5
of 129.
24.
No. Close.
I mean, it's got to be a little over, a little over 25, 26?
Yes, there you go.
What
Between 25 and 26.
I was off by 1.
Yeah, you were a lot closer than I thought.
Thank
so
you.
basically,
you know my philosophy.
Yeah.
It's my understanding that there would be no math.
They talked to about 25 coaches that are coaching FBS teams entering this season over a bunch of different things, anything from NCAA rules to social issues to their peers. And here's where it gets interesting, because not only do you get the percentage, you get some comments as well.
Yeah, again, these are great because you don't have to say who you are.
But these are coaches talking about other coaches. Who is the most overrated coach in college football? It's a tie at 20% each. Willie Taggart, Florida State. James Franklin, Penn State.
Now, hold on a second.
Uh-huh.
Get him.
I can understand the Willie Taggart thing because we've never seen him establish a program. He's gone somewhere and had some success, and then he goes somewhere else. 3 of the 4 bowl teams he's had, he wasn't around to coach them in the bowl game, right? That's the situation there. So I understand that. But James Franklin? Doc Clippers?
One of the comments, again, these coaches, these comments are from coaches, their peers. In a comment where it says, explain yourselves about the overrated. James Franklin, one of the other coaches, said his coaching peers know he's full of it. Sort of
See, this is always interesting because we judge coaching based on wins and losses and all this stuff that we can see from the outside. These guys all actually know what kind of coach you are. And Dad, you know this. You've been around a lot of coaches in your time that might have the accolades to back it up, but can't coach worth a lick.
Let me tell you, it is one of the great lies out there. It's really the same as players, but players have to go on the field and you can see battles winning or losing. Just because you're a coach in college, big time college, or for that matter, in the NFL, I don't mean just head coach. I mean assistant coaches. Doesn't mean you're a great coach.
And just because you win awards as a player, as a coach, doesn't make you necessarily the most deserving of that. That stuff is highly political.
So Willie Taggart was tied with Franklin. On Willie Taggart, this is another coach saying, I would say Willie Taggart. He was only at Oregon for 1 year. It's not like he really transformed that program, and that's a place that's won for a long time. Not that he isn't good. He's won, but usually when you get a job like Florida State, it's because you've won some championship or done something really amazing. Another coach said Willie Taggart because he still has a career losing record.
That first quote, it sounds like someone else wanted that job.
Yeah, maybe.
I'm sure there's a little bit of that in all of this.
It's a little bit like somebody else wanted that job, which I find very interesting. I also find very interesting that somehow David Shaw is rated as the one of the most underrated coaches in football at 12%, but he also got votes as one of the most overrated coaches.
Well, this is like A-Rod in baseball, most hated player and best player and all that kind of thing. He would cover both sides of the coin all the time as well.
And the quote on David Shaw, explain yourselves as overrated. He does a great job, but oh my Lord, I mean, it's like God's gift of football. I didn't say he didn't do a good job. So what's your issue? I need more clarity from this anonymous coach because it sounds like he's talking himself into circles here. You know, I think he's jealousy of the pub, but then he realizes he actually does a good job.
Well, it's interesting how you judge this because in so many of these
Judge not, lest ye be judged.
Well, like Kirk Ferentz is listed as one of the most overrated coaches, and I don't understand how overrated to me would be someone who is given lofty expectations that they don't live up to. Like Kirk Ferentz, do we ever really expect Iowa to contend for a Big Ten title with the likes of Ohio State and Michigan? We're not picking them as preseason favorites. Usually now, Iowa's been very good. They're always rock solid, great along the lines of scrimmage. They've had great DB play for the last few years. But in general, Iowa's not a team that you think is so strapped with talent that the expectation should always be there. Like I saw someone criticizing Nick Saban saying it's easy to roll in with the best roster in college football and win. That to me at least logically makes a little more sense than looking at Kirk Ferentz and saying maybe just because of the contract number and the security you're overrated. I'm not sure how you've handicapped
Here's
that
a couple of remember, again, these are comments from other coaches. Because you mentioned Saban, I'll read his first. And then there's one about Jimbo Fisher, now at Texas A&M. This is about Saban. If you had the number one recruiting class in the country every year, you'd win like Nick Saban. He shows up at every single game with a better roster than the team he's playing. If you count cheating and getting the best players in the country as part of running a program, he's the best in the country. Wow.
Now, hold on a minute now.
Wow.
Yeah. Let's be clear about that. If you count cheating, if someone said that to you, what would be your next question be?
What is the
How's he cheating?
Right.
Yeah.
What are we talking about here? Right.
Yeah.
So if you're going to say that, I think you need to back that up with something.
And of course, this coach does. And he goes on to say it's like saying an NFL coach is the best coach in the league if he gets 25 first-round picks every year.
But hold on a minute. I think that is missing one of the most critical parts of college football, and that's recruiting. Okay? If you don't recruit, you're not going to win. Right?
Yes.
That's part of the scenario.
Yes, it is.
And let's be honest, is recruiting a skill?
Yes.
Exactly. So I think that's a bogus argument don't blame him for being the best at one is a big part of the job, which is recruiting and getting the best players.
I'll say it is a skill to do, but once you become one of the best programs, it does become a little easier. I'm not going to lie about that, but there is no way on God's green earth I'd put Nick Saban in an overrated category by any stretch of the imagination.
Oh, I mean, and Nick Saban would be the first one to tell you that the part of his job that he enjoys the most at Alabama is being able to go and get those recruits. I mean, for those years when he was at Michigan State, we just can't go get the same caliber of kid as we're getting in Alabama. He realized there was a ceiling there, and that's why he is at Alabama now.
And one of the reasons he's the best is the atmosphere around him that he brings around him, which leads to some votes for overrated for Jimbo Fisher. This, again, another coach, one of his peers saying this about Jimbo Fisher. We're going to see in the next 3 years what happens with Jimbo Fisher at Texas A&M. That disaster last year at Florida State, he prides himself on being just like Nick Saban. He only worked for him for a couple of years. He never had the organizational skills. He flies by the seat of his pants. It looks like it's organized, and the words he uses are the same. But if you talk to people who work in his office, the desk is sloppy, the rooms are sloppy. That's, again, from another coach talking about Jimbo Fisher.
So now we're talking about tidiness in the office?
Well, no, and listen, Trey, that all does go together. I'm not going to lie, especially, I think, in a college, the atmosphere that you have around you. I mean, and this is what coaches look at. They will look at things like that, and they will make it part of their process to be organized, and that would include having a clean workspace and all that. It does go down to that. While I don't know about this is a coach saying other coaches who have worked for Jimbo have seen this, but I certainly know that there are some coaches, and Nick Saban would be one of them, who would work on that, who would make sure that was part of their process as well.
I mean, that's something that, going the other way, college coaches do and enforce with players all the time. We had a very strict sort of locker room code as to how everything was supposed to look in your locker and everything like that. I had an offensive line coach, Frank Verducci, who said straight up, he's like, I won't put a center on the field, a guy who's in a communicating position, who doesn't have his house in order, who doesn't have his off-the-field stuff in order, who doesn't have his life sort of cleaned up, because those are all transferable traits. Now, the direct correlation between your desk and your job isn't there, but it sounds like this is more about how you carry yourself in general.
By the way, Nick Saban and Alabama are going to try and protect that lead atop college football again this season.
Golic and Wingo.
It was all sort of one big giant Jell-O mold.
It's very interesting where that went.
All right, Golic and Wingo here with you on a Monday morning. Glad you're with us. We've been having this discussion about the best breakfast carb specifically for a sandwich, which was not noted accurately on the poll, which led to all kinds of confusion, including me very upset that hash browns weren't in there. But it seems like the hot button topic, Mike, has been biscuit or no biscuit.
Right.
And people are weighing in very heavily one way or the other on our voicemail line, 860-506-5505, about that. And here is someone who is extremely pro-biscuit.
Hey, this is Q from South Dakota. Biscuits hands down the best. The only problem is you better have something to drink while you're eating it because it'll dry your mouth out. But I love the biscuit.
I agree with that. That's another question you can ask when eating one of the four choices we have. Which could you get by without having to have a drink every time? The biscuit, I agree. I do, unless you're having biscuits and gravy, I get it. But like a biscuit regular or biscuit sandwich, you need to have some drink with it every single time.
You need something to wash it down.
Yeah,
the bagel would fall into that category, too. You need something else. Now, of course, this led us on to the discussion about biscuits and gravy, and somebody's like, biscuits and gravy is the dumbest thing ever. Clearly, he's never been south of Virginia.
That's exactly right.
Or south of Maryland, quite frankly. And then someone went off on a completely different gravy tangent.
Golic, I don't know if you've ever heard of it or not. The best breakfast that you can have on a Sunday morning is biscuits and chocolate gravy, good hot pork sausage. If you've not tried it, it's a Southern dish, but it's killer. Check it out.
See, to me, that's not gravy.
Yeah.
That's just liquid chocolate,
and,
which is good.
Listen,
we have no problem with liquid chocolate.
There's nothing wrong with that, and I'll give it a try. I don't understand why you said just on Sundays.
Yeah.
I mean,
why limit yourself?
Why are we limiting ourselves to 1/7 of the week?
Why don't we limit it to days that end in Y?
I would say that's
there
a good
we go,
idea.
And that's
your choice.
That's the parameter. Speaking of Sundays, did you see what happened Sunday at the in Chicago?
I did.
For the White Sox game against Kansas City Royals? Sister Mary Jo Kobiak from Marion Catholic High School threw out the first pitch, and she was a boss.
It's incredible.
First of all, they caught her warming up, and she did the old pop the baseball off the bicep and caught it. Fantastic.
Incredible.
Then she doubles down from the rubber. She wasn't on the front of the mound.
She was not on the front of the mound.
Front of the rubber, and threw a sinker for a strike.
I don't know if it was actually a sinker. I mean, it was a ball, I think, that maybe had enough speed that looked like it was a. I don't think
I'm giving her sinker.
I don't think in a repertoire, all of a sudden, she said, I'm going to pull out a sinker here. But
the bicep pop is
I
just
get what you're
money.
saying. Listen, and the biggest thing, because as mean it would have sounded, I wouldn't have given her as much credit had she been throwing from the grass.
But she didn't.
But she didn't. She was on the mound, because you hear some places, like the first pitches like Greeny and I threw out, we threw from the mound. And others, though, you hear you have to throw from the front of the mound because they don't want you on the mound. So sometimes you don't have a choice. Quite honestly, they may have told her to pitch from the front of the mound, and she said, I'm pitching on the mound.
Yeah.
What are you going to do?
Yeah.
You're going to tell her no?
Yeah, exactly.
You're going to tell her no? No, you're not.
No.
So she rifled one from the rubber and was fantastic.
It was great.
After the bicep pop,
Yeah.
I mean, the form was fantastic.
Clearly, this was not her first time holding a
No, I
baseball.
completely agree with that.
By the way, according to a 2008 article, she's a nun at Marian Catholic High School. According to a 2008 article from the Times of Northwest Indiana, Sister Mary Jo played both volleyball and softball while attending the College of St. Scholastica in Minnesota after her graduation from Cathedral High School in 1987. So I think we have to say that was a divine pitch by her. That was 10 out of 10. So if her first pitch was 10 out of 10, how did you rate yours?
Oh, mine was like no, I bounced my first one, so that's a 0.
Yeah.
That's
But you came back strong after that, right?
but you're asking my first one. They said airmail it before you bounce it.
Yeah.
And again, I'll say I had a great guy before I went out there. He said, "You throwing from the mound?" I said, "Yeah." So we're both throwing from the mound. He said, "Make sure you release high because you're stepping down on the mound."
Right.
And I, thinking I was a stud, former professional athlete.
Dude.
Yeah, blah. All I heard was blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Right? Come on. It's a pitch. How hard can it be? Yeah. I played Little League Baseball.
You played high school baseball even though you forgot about it.
I forgot. I was a pro athlete. So I get in the mound, and I mean, sure enough, I step, and as I released the ball, I swore because I knew I'm like, oh, in that millisecond, it's amazing the amount of thought you can have.
Oh.
I went, blank.
Yeah.
And I thought, dude was right.
Yeah.
Because my release point was bad and it hit about 3 feet in front of the catcher. And I got booed, and I deserved to get booed.
Well, listen, the voices in your head in that millisecond, every time you step over a golf ball sometimes.
Yeah,
CT
there you
Pan
go.
had that situation. Now, in your situation when you did it, did you practice before?
No, not before. The only thing I could do was Green and I played catch on the side.
Okay.
Just kind of.
Because you could have gone maybe to the bullpen and
But
stepped
no,
on the mound there.
we didn't do that. We just kind of played catch. I played catch with kids in the stands just to kind of warm up my arm.
I would have gone straight to the bullpen.
And I'm throwing. How am I going to throw different in the bullpen than I'm going to throw?
No, but there's a mound there. It would give you a chance.
Well, yeah, no,
to
that's
feel
true.
like what it would be
That's
off
true.
the mound.
So what I did after that is I was on the mound and I took a little step behind the rubber.
Yeah.
So when I stepped, I was stepping on the flat top of the mound.
Right.
The whole time I wasn't stepping down anymore, and I just put a little more juice on it, and I made it there.
I think what happened to you here sums up that old phrase, failing to prepare is preparing to fail.
Yeah, I did. I
You should
failed.
have taken one or two throws on the mound. I think you would have. I get it now.
Yeah.
I get it
Yeah.
now.
Golic and Wingo.
Let's not expect too much. There's only one person out there that's expecting way too much out of this guy too early. We know who that is. It's his father. To give batters a different look, pitchers throw a changeup.
Your idea of a different look is sunglasses.
That's true. But La Quinta Inns and Suites is really taking the different look thing to a new level.
Definitely a major league makeover, starting with a bolder, brighter lobby full of comfortable spaces to let you settle in.
Or chill out in front of a big flat screen like Wingo would.
Oh, you know it. It's a changing La Quinta look to help you get in the zone and look sharp when you hit that big meeting.
Prepare to win at business with La Quinta Inns and Suites.
Book now at LQ.com. We are delighted to be joined on the show by Mike Pereira, the Fox Rules analyst and former VP of officiating for the NFL. All right, Mike, let's lay it all out there. After 2 weeks, people seem very much up in arms about, first and foremost, the lowering of the helmet rule and how it's being called in the NFL. Is this going to be the way we'll see it in the regular season, or just like coaches and players, are the officials using the preseason to try and make sure we get this right?
Well, look, you got to focus on control 2 feet and then an element. Oh, wait a minute. That's not even an issue anymore.
Exactly.
It's amazing. All summer long, I studied what a catch was, and now we're to the helmet. I think that we're overreacting a little bit because, and I've said this a couple times in the preseason. I used to tell officials, all right, we're going to make a point of this point of emphasis. So we're going to throw, and we're going to have a lot of penalties, and we're going to take the criticism. But once the regular season starts, we're going to back off a bit. And people used to ask me, do you officiate differently in the preseason than you do in the regular season? And I would lie and say no, when in reality, we always try to make a point of something. So there is that going on. This is a little bit more dangerous, though, to take that approach because I think you're putting so much confusion into everyone's eyes, not only the players, but the officials themselves. As I watch these games, I look at some of these hits and say, there just is no way that this can be a foul. And you look now to see what created the confusion. And to me, what created this confusion is the broad rule of the helmet. I was okay with the crown of the helmet when it came to the tackler versus the runner. I was okay with that. But this now to make it the side of the helmet, any part of the helmet except the face mask, or if it's a quarterback and a quarterback sneak, I'm a little bit concerned about how broad it is. And I would like to be a fly on the wall in New York in the officiating command center to see what, in fact, they're actually saying to the officials at this point. Because if they are, and you grade preseason games just like you do regular season games, if they are hammering the officials and giving them no calls, which means this was a helmet hit that should have been called, if they're hammering them, then look out, because that will carry over into the regular season. But my heart of hearts tells me that even though it's Al Riveron, it's likely the same as Dean Blandino, Carl Johnson, myself, and Jerry Seaman. I think they're making a point trying to change the culture. And quite frankly, even though we're focused on a number of hits that we're seeing called that look to be certainly like they're not fouls, I kind of think I'm buying the Kool-Aid a little bit because I'm seeing the game played a little bit different, still big hits, but less, head hits. And so we'll see, but I'm going to go with what I said long ago, that once the regular season starts, it's not going to be as big an issue as we thought it would be.
Mike, one of the bigger problems I was having was not so much the head hits, because I agree with you 100% on everything you said there as far as the crown of the head. You drop that and hit and lead with that and hit with that. I get wanting to penalize that. But I've seen a couple of defensive backs run up and what would have been big hits in the past where they just dive through the guy. They're actually breaking down, which is exactly what you'd like them to do. They're putting their head down a bit, but they're hitting with their shoulder. They're not even hitting the receiver in the head at all, and they're getting flagged for it. So I guess I'm always going to think as a former player thinking, what the hell am I supposed to do if I'm getting called for this? Am I supposed to just wait for the regular season and hope that they don't do it as much when I'm trying to learn what I need to be doing on the field right now?
And that's the danger to me, Mike, is that you've got that, what are you telling the player at this point? But let's also go to the eyes of the officials. They've never had to call this before. I mean, this is nothing that the open field stuff where it was a literal lead with the crown of the helmet into the body of a defenseless player. They called that. But all of this that is going on now on runners and all this, it's brand new for them. And I look at these and go, oh, geez, I mean, I grade that one, I graded incorrect. I look at this, oh, yeah, I would grade that one incorrect too. I think there's an adjustment for them. They're doing what they're told. But remember, they're making snap judgments in 1/26th of a second without the use of replay. And so they're building what they call a library of fouls. So all of these calls and, that are made, and then they'll go through before the start of the regular season. They'll break them down and say, this isn't. Now, I'm watching the game enough, and I'm not a huge fan of preseason football, but I'm watching it enough that I would say probably only a third, this would be my guess, only a third of the hits that I actually see are being called. I mean, there's a ton more that are not being called than are being called under the standard that they're using now. So let's hope that it doesn't advance to the scale that, all of a sudden, instead of 1.55 calls per game, as Al Riveron said, let's hope it doesn't get to 3.55, because then it becomes more of a debacle. But again, it's an adjustment period. Everything about preseason is adjustment period, and I feel bad for both groups. I feel bad for the players, and I do feel bad for the officials, who are trying to, enforce this rule when they haven't done it before. And it's not like, the thing is, it's not like emphasizing the tackles to get them up on the line of scrimmage. It's not like emphasizing motion men not moving forward at the snap. This is a player safety issue. This is a 15-yard penalty issue. This is a big issue, and again, I think that we'll get to the level that we find acceptable, and I hope that when we start the season, that the word gets down to the officials that the focus is going to be on the crown, where it's getting linear and leading with the crown. But if the heads turn sideways and you get contact with the side of the helmet, I don't think anybody wants that, because then you're basically leading with the shoulder, which is what you want them to do.
Right.
So I really do think they'll back off a bit.
Mike Pereira with us, former vice president of officiating in the NFL, and does a great job as a Fox NFL rules analyst. So that's one rule, Mike, that has caused a lot of uproar. The other one is the point of emphasis and re-emphasizing it, otherwise known as the Aaron Rodgers rule, which is you can't land your body weight on the quarterback. And, Mike, I got to tell you, that one, it seems like we've had some pretty decent tackles, and I don't think that one's changing. I mean, I think that one's going to be called in the regular season the way it's being called in the preseason, because the NFL knows stars matter, TV matters, and if everybody's watching backup quarterbacks, we may not be having as many eyeballs on football.
Well, the interesting thing is that what is this? I mean, is this a reaction to the Aaron Rodgers injury last year, which the league came out and said was not a foul? I mean, that was they were clear in coming out that said that it was a part of the normal tackle. But then if you listen to Brad Allen at one of the training camps, who said the point of emphasis came after the Aaron Rodgers tackle. Yep. So you're 100% right in that this one stays. Everything with the quarterback stays. And, Sean Hockley and Mike, I loved it. We got rid of one talker, and now this one, Sean doesn't talk as much. He just talks more often. And so I hope, you look at that play, and I get what he called. There was a little bit of a lunge where he kind of threw him down, and you could see it in slow motion. I mean, I didn't recognize it in real time. But, again, brand new referee. And so he certainly refereed in college, and he's done a couple of preseason games before. He may get, one of those calls that they say, okay, we'll go with you, but we'd rather not have you call that again. I hope that it's, we kind of get to the rule, or back to the rule, where it's basically a lift and drive. I mean, that's how we brought that in. We didn't want a defensive player to lift the quarterback and drive him into the ground. And now it's land on top of him with all of his body weight. I'm sure that when they showed that play to all the referees, they will probably say, this is one we don't want called. There's not enough of a lunge into the ground. His body is off to the side, but, it's not going to be the first call that they look at and say they would rather have it not made. But, we know that in this day and age, and whether it's, Aaron Rodgers, you saw the impact of that injury last year, or anybody else, any other quarterback in the league and the committee and the owners have always been out to protect the quarterback, and that protection is never going to go away.
No, it is not. Mike, we appreciate you being with us this morning. We'll see how much the helmet rule changes in the preseason, and we'll see if at all for lack of a better term, Aaron Rodgers' point of emphasis rule changes in the regular season. Thanks for being up with us this morning, man.
Thanks, Mike.
You got it, guys. Take care.
This has been the Best of Golic and Wingo podcast. You can listen or subscribe on the ESPN app, Apple Podcasts, or just ask your smart speaker to play Golic and Wingo. Plus, you can check the guys out live weekday mornings from 6 to 10 Eastern on ESPN Radio and on ESPN News.